Welcome back to Simon and Whiten, the podcast at the crossroads of business, media, and politics. I'm Christian Whiten, joined as always by Mark Simon. Mark, please say hello.
Hello, good afternoon, everybody.
All right, so inflation is roaring. It isn't transient, as we were told by our Federal Reserve and our Biden administration. It came in at 7.5% annual rate for January, so it's as high as it's ever been recently, as high as it's been in 40 years. And markets were off 2% on Thursday when the news came out. You have some commentators, especially the pump and dump guys over at CNBC and others, saying, buy on the dip. This is a great opportunity, but it seems to me that this might be the beginning of a long-term bear trend that is driven by inflation. Market valuations are still kind of high. Everything seems to be going up in prices. We're coming off this period where people had a lot of cash to spend from governments, spending that went through the roof and other causes. What do you think? What do you think the political and other implications of this inflation are, Mark?
I think it's impacting on a level in two ways. First of all, I think it's showing us how completely out of touch the elites on Wall Street, Washington, D.C., West Coast, whatever are. In other words, when you tell somebody that the price of electricity is up 13%, gas is up close to 40%, meats are up 14 or 15%, eggs are up 13%, milk's up 7%. I hate to say it, for a lot of the people who are probably our top 5% earners, they go, oh, it's more expensive now, but they don't change their life. For everybody else, life is changing. And the point that I'm trying to drive home here is that the decision making now is horrible in terms of policy making, because we have basically elites that are completely disconnected. Look at the White House with Jan Psaki and her husband. That's probably a $600,000 a year, $700,000 a year household. Do you think she even looks at the price of milk when she has it delivered in from Whole Foods? Do you think any of the people in these elite positions at Wall Street firms even look at this? So I really think investors and people have to go out there and start really looking at what's happening on the ground. And the fact is, if you're making under $150,000 a year, family of four, family of five, four people, it's really impacting you. You're starting to see it. The gas costs more. Imagine you're a family of four with teenagers and you're running two cars. Gas prices are up 40%. That's a few thousand US dollars a year more that's coming out of your pocket. Heating fuel is up.
Right, we have some statistics on oils. Let me jump in with those. So, West Texas Intermediate is now at $90 a barrel. London Brent's at 91. AAA says the current average for regular is $3.48 a gallon. That's up from $3.30 a month ago. But if you go back a year, this is up very substantially.
And it goes all the way through the economy. I mean, I'm from a farm family. When people, we were making a lot of money. My cousins were making a lot of money a few years back because gas was $2.45 a gallon and beef prices were still pretty strong. Now beef prices are 14% up, but guess what? Fuel is 40% up. Everything on the farm is directly related to fuel. So what are you doing? I think it's a really bizarre situation we're in here that, like I said, we've just got these two economies in America. We've got the elites who don't seem to feel anything. Nothing seems to bother them. And we've got everybody else, which is probably 90% of the country, that's looking around going, oh my God, I'm spending a lot more money. That's going to bleed through into the markets because people are not going to be buying as many capital goods. Yeah, they may not be going out to dinner as much as they used to. Wage earnings are up. And also the other thing too is that when that earnings go up, when those wages go up, that's an inflationary pressure. So in other words, you can't really have cheap meals out now. You know what I'm saying? If the family of four, all right, McDonald's is there. But if you go to TGIF or one of the chains or something like that, a family of four, it's an $80 dinner. And, there's really not much you can do to save that. Look, oil prices, as we're talking about oil, let's be blunt. If something in Ukraine happens, what are we at, $90 a bit? We're at 110 probably. And then gasoline goes to what? $4.20 a gallon? If you're a home care aide, or if you're a nurse, or if you're a driver and you drive 20 miles round trip each day, or 40-mile round trip each day, that's a lot of money. It's adding up. I just don't see anything good happening in the economy as long as we've got 7% inflation. Right. Because as we all know, 7% is not the real number. The real number nobody goes out and buys the basket of goods. The real
Yeah.
number, as most people say, is probably more closer to 11 or 12% because it's gasoline, it's food. If gas is up 40%, groceries are up 9%. Um, Fruit and vegetables are up 7 or 8%. As part of like non other groceries, fresh groceries. Vegetables are up that much. Clothing's up 7 or 8% now because of the high freight rates coming across the Pacific. People don't realize that. So everything's more expensive. So if your life's got if every time you look around, you're paying 10% more. That's kind of hard to get excited about doing other things in the economy.
Right. And for most people who aren't in that elite, it's been like a 10% wage cut thanks to
Yeah,
the ruling class.
I mean, at some of my businesses, we just put in like a 6.5% wage increase. We've already decided that's not going to be enough. Now we're not going to be able to do anything in the next couple of months, but we're going to have to come back and revisit that.
Right.
Because if you want to keep people, you know what I'm saying? People are mobile now. So God bless them. They can move. But if you're an employer, how do you deal with
Now,
that?
politically, the polls show, if you look at the Real Clear Politics average of approval polls for Joe Biden, so this includes some that probably inflate his approval, but it's a little under 41% now. 30%, even the high 30s, really is an unpleasant place for presidents to be. We're talking George W. Bush at the absolute bottom when Iraq was going poorly and the economy was
Mm-hmm.
about to fall apart. And people really react, especially gas and food. That is something they're very sensitive to. You point out, there's no easy bounce back from this. If inflation is real and the Fed seems to be getting that, and there's talk now of maybe a half point raise in one instance and a full point between now and June. I think it's actually going to take a whole lot more than that. Behind the scenes, the bond purchasing program of the Fed, which creates dollars out of thin air, increases the money supply. That's going to end by March, so it's really coming to an end now, theoretically, if what they're saying is the truth. So, for Biden looking ahead, there's not a lot that he can do. They're certainly not going to do anything on the supply side. They're not going to cut regulations or taxes or encourage the energy industry. So, you have a situation that's already bad with rates going up, potentially the market coming down, GDP going down. He's in trouble, right?
Look, I think there's those little stickers. I actually saw some when I was driving around recently to DC. You're driving up to the little "I did" those stickers that Joe Biden has. I saw some of those in Pennsylvania as I was driving back. I go up around the Harrisburg area, and you saw some there. And then I saw some going down on 95 when I stopped at the station. People, they had ripped them off, but you could see people were putting them on there. Um, Look, I think that there is no confidence whatsoever that these people in the White House or in DC can turn things around. I think Republicans have to be very careful that we actually started, I should say we, I'm a Republican, that Republicans actually address issues rather than have Marjorie Greene and all the other people talking about
Yes.
conspiracies and all these things, because that's the conservative elites who are just as out of touch. In other words, the people that vote for her are the people she should be taking care of, and you can't have an elite you can't have these crazies on both sides, and none of the problems are getting addressed. I think the truckers strike, to be perfectly honest with you, truckers convoys in Canada are actually a direct reflection of that. The Canadians don't have the emotion in their politics we do, but they're just looking over at Trudeau. He doesn't care about them. Then on the conservative side in Canada, basically they're fighting over everything that's ridiculous, and they're going, hey, we're trying to get trucks and we don't want to stop on the border for 3 days and get tested all the time and, lose all this money. And most of these drivers actually they get paid by the mile. So if you're spending time sitting there waiting for a test, you're not getting paid. And, anybody who knows about the border, and I do because we've got businesses on the other side, I know quite a bit about the border. Those trucks start waiting more than 3 hours at the border, they start getting some really nasty truck drivers. I mean, these guys, when you're coming down from Ontario, they're looking at like they're looking at multiple different bridges to go over. There's a whole network of information. So all of a sudden for Trudeau and Biden to go, hey, we're going to test everybody. It's not happening. And I think, to be honest with you, I don't know how Biden gets out of this. I mean, what do? Do they walk Fauci out the back room? You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Do a Joe Pesci on him in the bottom of the floors or something like that. I mean, if I was Fauci, I wouldn't be walking in any rooms with plastic on the floor. It'd be all over, you know. But I mean, it's just, you look at these guys and they don't know what to do. Look at the governors from New Jersey. I was watching CNBC this morning, because Maria's not around. I was watching CNBC this morning, and Ned Lamont or whatever. What a great name for a governor, Ned Lamont from Connecticut. I mean, the guy is like, literally, he is Ned Lamont. That's the only thing you have to say about him. And he's sitting there going, oh, no, well, things have changed. It's like, no, like 9 Democratic governors got together. And what did they do? 9 Democratic governors got together and basically decided that, all right, we'll find political cover from our left, because they're worried about from the left. We'll find political cover from our left, and we'll all go together. And everybody saw it. You could see the host, even like the left-leaning Becky Quick and Andrew Sorkin. They weren't buying it. They're going, yeah, we know what you guys did. All of a sudden, overnight, it changes. Glenn Youngkin comes in from Virginia, changes. My brother's got kids in Fairfax County. It's a joke. They don't know what to do. But they know the politics are so bad about it. And people are tired of it.
Right. No, it's amazing that you have those governors who took that action, and the White House hasn't. I mean, you still have Biden getting off of Marine One to walk outside to the White House with his mask on. The requirement to wear a mask on airplanes comes up, I think March 22nd is when it currently expires, and everyone seems to expect it's going to roll past that. That'll be interesting. The idea that Omicron, which is everywhere.
I think we'll be unmasked in airplanes for the bureaucrats have too much power.
Yeah,
on that.
it's a federal issue. It's pointless, I would say, since they've just never been able to correlate travel with increases in mortality and cases. All the air is very well filtered. As long as you have the APU running on the ground and then in the air, it's very well filtered. If they wanted to send a signal to America that this is over, which you think they would have a political incentive to do at this point, except with the teachers' unions and the other people who don't want to work, they could say, okay, we're done masking on planes and we're done masking kids.
Well, look, the left, the Democrats are trapped by they're trapped by their special interest groups. The teachers have them trapped. And in the teachers' unions, from what you read and, no firsthand experience, from what I read, basically the teachers are split, but the activist teachers want those masks on for whatever reason it may be. But here's the interesting thing, the dilemma the Democrats have themselves in. Imagine, this is what somebody told me the other day who's really familiar with Fairfax County schools in Virginia. What he told me was, he said, right now, you've got, every time they have a meeting on masks, they've got a full room of 500 people, and outside there's 5,000 people, okay, who want the mask off. The problem is, as soon as they get the mask off, they got a full room of 500 nuts who want everybody to mask up. What they have to keep remembering is there's nobody out in the parking lot. In other words, this is a small group of people. I'm seeing it here in some of the schools, even at my daughter's school, where basically there's no reason for these girls to be masked up at continual, but they know that there are certain groups of parents, the small minority of them, who are going to raise holy hell if masks come off for whatever reason. You know what I'm saying? And, that's it. The only reason they should be wearing masks at my daughter's school is, quite frankly, they got some elderly nuns around. But then my point is, you do the Sweden thing. Just have the nuns move to the back for a while. You know what I'm saying? And that's it. But don't corrupt the girls.
All right, switching gears, we could give ourselves a pat on the back toward the end of this segment, because it's another instance where I think we called the trend. Indonesia, the reputed Donald Trump of Indonesia, is getting into coal. His name, which I'm going to screw up here, is Hari Tanios Odibjo. Guaranteed that is...
You got the Hari Tanios right. You got the Hari Tanios right.
Okay,
I know that
very
much.
well. Hey, so very interesting guy. He runs a media conglomerate and a charter plane service, and he's going to morph that company into something that's much more energy focused, especially in coal. In fact, coal will now become the main business. And this is on the backdrop of Indonesia benefiting. I mean, first of all, they make stuff, they make coal, they make furniture, they export lumber, et cetera, et cetera. But they've been selling lots of coal to China. China used to buy most of its coal from Australia. China's mad at Australia for standing up for itself. doing things like, planning to buy submarines and not going along with Beijing's sort of diplomatic initiatives. So China switches to from Australia to Indonesian coal. Incidentally, Australia is doing just fine. It just took the coal and sold it to Japan and India instead. So sorry, China. The coal boycott didn't work any better than the wine boycott. But anyway, Indonesia doing pretty well. You've done business and shipping in that part of the world. Good move, bad move?
I think the two brightest economies, probably the two brightest economies in Southeast Asia, are Indonesia and the Philippines, largely because they have a stable birth rate now. In other words, the Philippines is about 2.3, 2.4. That's fine. That's a growth rate they can handle considering their migration trends and all that good stuff. Indonesia is a little bit higher. I think I remember closer to 3, but still a growing population, educating the people very quickly. Becoming a place where companies continue to go in for higher end manufacturing. And I think the fact of the matter is they got a lot of coal and they have a lot of need for that coal. And I think it's going to be a very good business for them. And when it comes to China, I think it's just a myth that the China is going to be able to get off coal. So they're going to have to keep buying it. By the way, I will tell you a little story. The whole thing about the Australian coal is not being purchased is somewhat ridiculous. My understanding is there's a disproportionate number of ships departing Australia heading to Japan that magically get diverted into China. In other words, because the ship, they load up, they're loading up. You know what I'm saying? And a lot of the coal is on regular contract for the Japanese, but there's the spot shipments, and those guys, as they're moving north, somebody picks up the phone and says, we'd be happy to take it at a little bit higher price. Over it goes, you know what I'm saying? And as long as the government of China is willing to do a nod, wink, wink, in other words, it leaves Australia heading to Japan, it leaves Australia heading to someplace else. And then halfway through, it's like a bill of lading change almost. But the Chinese, as far as they can say, we didn't buy any coal from Australia, we bought it coming from Japan, or in other words, all that good stuff. My understanding is that's not as frequent as it had been in the past. It's recently dried up a little bit. But I know a friend who's pretty tight in that area, and he says Australians are having no problem whatsoever. But China continues to need energy, and they're going to continue to build coal-fired plants. One of the reasons also why they're going to build coal-fired plants? Because they don't have the massive amount of technical know-how coming out of the schools to run nuclear power plants. It's a nuclear power plant takes a lot of highly skilled, very smart people. And as the Chinese population's been dropping, as people are moving into other areas, quite frankly, it's harder and harder for them to go there. I saw some chart about 6 months ago. It's either something like for a coal number of people taken for the same kilowatt hours plants. For a nuclear power plant, it's something like 7 times more people than a coal plant, because coal is pretty much automated. You know what I'm saying? In other words, it's not a whole lot to it. Once you set them up, and you can just set them up a lot quicker. But nuclear power plants have so many more people involved, and so it's hard for the Chinese. It just takes longer to bring these things online, and to have people to work on them.
Well, here comes the pat on our back. Related to this a little bit is Rio Tinto. I think we're both in that, both bullish on that. It's come up year to date. We're only a month into the year, month and a half. It's from 68 to 79. Its dividend, despite that higher price, is still an 8.7% yield. And again, here's a company that does things, makes things. Of course, the environmentalists don't like it, but a real mining company with real operations. Not so much coal, but gold and other minerals. You still bullish?
Yeah. Absolutely. You know why I'm bullish? Because I was watching the news the other day. I was watching Fox or something, and they had the 8 major energy companies sitting in the White House. You know what I'm saying? And then we had this crazy person who's going to the Federal Reserve, who's going to be going after energy companies on the Federal Reserve. Look, I'm telling you, in fairness to China, China's looked out and they said, hey, we're going to do all we can for the environment, but we're not going to cost people jobs. We're not going to hit our economy for it. India sent the same message out. Rio Tinto is going to be just fine. It's a very American fallacy that somehow we get to jump up and down and tell the world what to do, and they listen. I think that's energy policy is the one place where it's completely, they do what they're going to do, and how they're going to do it. I have seen it in the Philippines. I'm seeing it in Myanmar. I'm seeing other places, they're going to need power. As they need power, they're going to need minerals. Cool.
Sticking with a bit of the Chinese here, and a couple angles, I want to ask you about the Olympics. But before we get to that, Binance, I think I'm pronouncing that right, not Binance,
Yeah.
buying a $200 million stake in Forbes. Binance was a Chinese-based cryptocurrency exchange. They have relocated their headquarters and they say, Scouts honor, we are no longer Chinese, but of course they are. They were banned from doing business in the United States. They created a U.S. subsidiary, which apparently does conduct some business here. It's under investigation, I gather. I think I read that right. And of course, they will be one of the two biggest investors in Forbes, which will go public through, of course, a SPAC. I mean, why would you do a regular IPO with all the regulatory requirements and steps if you can just do a SPAC? So Forbes ultimately going to be publicly traded, and one of its big owners is going to be Binance. I mean, Forbes already was under some Chinese influence, if I'm recalling my history correctly, right?
Oh yeah, Forbes Asia has got. I mean, I can tell people stories of Forbes for just weeks on end, like their close relationship with the Singaporean government. You know what I'm saying? Their the Forbes, I mean, Forbes is a unique. The greatest story I ever heard about Forbes, and I heard this from a top editor at Jimmy Lai's house, and when Malcolm Forbes came up with the list, the richest people, his chief editor came in and said, "Hey, everybody we know is going to think that they're going to know that this list is not accurate," because we were giving him a hard time because we knew that from Apple Daily and Net, we knew who they were talking about. We knew the list wasn't accurate. You know what I'm saying? In other words, because our business people said, no, that doesn't sound right. And what Malcolm Forbes said to the guy said to him, "Hey, people are going to know this not accurate." And Malcolm Forbes said, "A lot more people are not going to know it's not accurate. So in other words, we're going to go with it." So the point is like they've always been somewhat flexible. They are brilliant marketers. They know what they're doing. Steve Forbes got out there. He had to sell the family. There's 3 brothers or 4 brothers, whatever it is. They had to sell. They wanted to sell. He found a Chinese group to buy the magazine, to buy the Asian operations. So there's already the Asian operations are already controlled by the Chinese. There's never a negative article in there about the Chinese. Every once in a while, somebody will sneak something in. They used to try to do a news. Now they're basically just a conference magazine, and they show up. A SPAC, yeah, why not? They're going to look for a bunch of people who think that they've got something going. Chinese company, I don't know who thinks they're going to be doing journalism. They really haven't been for a while. You know, I mean, did you see the Bitcoin thing? Like the woman who was arrested for that? She had a column in Forbes.
For laundering like $1 billion, she and her husband.
Yeah, and she had a column in Forbes.
That's a lot of money.
The people that I know who used to write for Forbes, I mean, Forbes used to have some really good journalists, but the people that I know now that are doing things there, I mean, it's basically, anybody who they don't pay. None of these people get paid. You just turn something in, So, I mean, look, it's the model that it is. It's kind of like, I get in trouble when I say this, like Newsweek. Like, Newsweek is Dinda Elliott's father. I can't remember his name. He used to run it. It was this great publication, this pillar of the journalism community, owned for a long time by the Washington Post before it was sold off to, what's her name, the congresswoman from California, her and her husband. Then she gave it up. It was bought by these, this strange group or whatever it is. And, but people still, it's kind of funny. People go, well, I just saw this Newsweek piece, and I'm going like, because I know, and it's like, I have the same reaction to Forbes, but brand's a brand, and brands matter in the media business. So people see Forbes and they actually think something's there. It's kind of like U.S. News and World Report. I mean, people go, oh, this college is ranked U.S. News and World Report. U.S. News and World Report would sell. If you were a university and you wanted to be ranked, they would find a category to rank you in the top 5, like top 5 liberal arts schools with most programs designed for the community of individuals who have learning disabilities. And then they would give you something like, and it was in the Midwest. And so then they would give you something that says, a U.S. News and World Report top 5 Midwest college. And then, you have to flip the fold to see what it's for.
Marketing.
It's just ridiculous. It gets to that stage. And the problem is that publications, look, they're desperate for money. We had a couple of magazines in Hong Kong as they were going out and they were dropping, the craziness that would show up in my office for plans. You know what I'm saying? I mean, just craziness. And it was tragic because, we had one magazine, it was the largest magazine in Hong Kong, and in a 5-year period, it just went like this. And at the end, we couldn't even sell it. We just had to shut it. At its height, it had
Interesting.
350
You can't.
people.
It's just too hard to migrate online. And once you
We
started
migrate you
as a paper,
migrate the segments online. You know what I'm saying? But once the platform becomes there, it doesn't mean anything anymore. It just becomes part of it. Hence my thing about why the New York Times buying The Athletic. Just build up your sports page. It's awful now. Just spend the money and bring people in. People will find the stories. You don't need to bring anybody in with you like that.
New York Times just bought Wordle, which I haven't played, I gather.
That's a Hong Kong guy. Hong Kong
Okay.
company.
Price in the low 7 figures on the heels of that other purchase.
Good for him. I mean, people forget, like, I was looking at the Twitter results, and, Twitter in the last 2 years has bought something like 25, 26 companies. They buy technology, they buy talent sometimes. I think with Wordle, that was basically, hey, this is a really popular game. These guys have got a good system here. Let's get this, bring it in here. You put it right next to their crossword thing. You know what I'm saying? And I think it's a really good agenda. Low 7 figures. What does that tell you? I mean, mid 7 figures. They paid $6 or $7 million for it. God bless the guy in Hong Kong. He got $6 or $7 million. Hopefully, he's immigrating out.
Yeah, just don't bother converting it to Hong Kong dollars.
Yeah,
and
get the money. Get the money. Get the money in
point.
Hong Kong where there's no capital gains, and then run away.
So
Get the money on, and then run away as quickly as possible.
Account for maybe like a second.
Bounce. Yeah, but yeah. So no, I think that's it. I still think I saw the News Corp results the other day. I was pleasantly surprised. I don't want to go into that area until we have to, but I was pleasantly surprised there. And I think that's it. And I know we have some other media companies to talk about.
We do. Well, yeah. I mean, we're talking about people who can execute, switching to people who cannot.
I know.
And that's DWAC. So once again, we're talking about a SPAC. This is the one that invested in Trump's media thing. So Trump's first foray with the media company is not sort of the movies, the videos, the documentaries, the plays, the books, the stuff that's upstreaming conservatism and culture that we have as conservatives. No play whatsoever. Instead, he's doing just, going head to head with Twitter, this giant, well-funded network, and they're flailing. So Truth Social, it's what it's going to be called. And it was supposed to come out in February, which was giving it a fair amount of lead time. I mean, this is 10-year-old technology ripping off Twitter. I mean, Parler managed to do it seemingly pretty quickly, but they've delayed. That went to a disclosure. And this is the interesting thing about DWAC, because even though it's a SPAC, it's a public company that once it has operations has to file quarterly reports, annual reports, disclose major events. And one of those happened, and that, they're going to delay Truth Social only about a month, but they have Devin Nunes, who's I'd say a fantastic litigator, former congressman at the top of this thing, but not a media executive. And Trump really, outside of real estate, isn't known for strategic thought, execution, follow through. What do you think?
I mean, Trump. I think a lot of people. One of the things about media is everybody thinks they can do media, but very few people can execute media. Look at what we just talked about, all these companies. Like, say what you want to say about Newsweek, but they managed to keep it going. Forbes just finds continual sucker after sucker. New York Times does a very good job executing. The Wall Street Journal does a pretty good job too. The Bloomberg guys know what they're doing. There are people out there that know what they're doing. At Twitter and some of these other guys, they have they're first movers, you know what I'm saying? But we saw what that meant for Facebook. I myself don't believe for a second that the Trump team that I've heard about, that I know is over there, have the people that can execute. I think that they believe that we're going to open up Donald Trump's going to go there. They're going to give away Trumpy Bear. You know those little bears they give away
Oh,
on.
right,
You know
with
they
the
have a
red
little
tie and the
that little
hair.
company that sells everybody Trumpy Bears that grandmothers buy to scare their children. If somebody gives Chase a Trumpy Bear, just find a way to have the cat kill it. But the thing is like you have those things there, and they're not executing. And the fact is, you're exactly right. You're spot on. This is old technology that any technology team could have come to you and said, "This is our roadmap. These are our things. This is what we have to have." Why aren't they hitting those? Because we think demand could be far more than we thought it was going to be. We want to make sure we're ready for it. No, that's not how you do it. You basically get overwhelmed, you know what I'm saying, and then wait for it. I think my personal belief is I think they are. I think it's a Trump thing, and I think the fact of the matter is he thought he could do it. He thought it would be easy money. It's not going to work out as I see it at this point in time. I don't. And also the other
Yeah.
thing too is I think Twitter will adjust quickly. You know what I'm saying? In other words, all Twitter has to do is let back on 15 or 20 people. And then you're back in the game. Even Trump. Imagine that they let Trump back on. I bet Trump would abandon his platform and go. That's what I would do if I was Twitter. The moment he launched, I would wait 1 month and let Trump back on the Trump. I mean, I think people really have to understand that the way the advertising works now, it's tough. It's tough if you're seen as too far. I think even the lefties have a problem with that now. In other words, companies want middle of the road stuff. I think that's why, in part, with Jack leaving, I think we've seen Jack Dorsey leaving Twitter. I think we've seen some changes at Twitter. They're not going to get credit for, you know what I'm saying? But I think the message is very clear. They are a commercial company now. They are trying to make it. Of course, the stock dived a couple of weeks ago. You know what I'm saying? But they're still making money.
Yeah. One last, if we could circle back to magazines briefly, I do get the Wall Street Journal on Saturday. Sometimes it comes on Sunday or Monday, but and occasionally has a magazine in it now. And you do see some of these where the first 20 pages are expensive watches, jewelry, things like
Yep.
that. And so to do that, you have to have proof of a wealthy readership. Then
Yeah, I mean, look, you know the demographics. I mean, the Wall Street Journal, the New York Times, the New York Times, essentially they have an incredibly solid demographic readership. In other words, the New York Times and the Wall Street Journal, they would prefer their writers think that somehow they're writing for fellow bohemians out in the world, but the real fact of the matter is that the Wall Street Journal, you're writing for fat white guys like me, who are upper income, and we read it, and they refuse to acknowledge that, which is why I think it'd be a very tough job being an editor over there, and why you get some crazy stuff. The New York Times is a little bit more dynamic in their readership, but it's a very wealthy readership, and these people have money. And the one thing about it is I love print. I think print's a fantastic medium still. The simple fact of the matter is like the Wall Street Journal is, I think their weekend Sunday is still 1 million copies. You're getting a beautiful ad that somebody looks at and they see it. And we do know from all the studies that we do in advertising that if somebody stops and looks at an ad, there's retention. Whereas
right.
digitally online, the retention's not there. They just right by it. And it's beautiful. I mean, I'm trying to think who I saw the other day in the Wall Street Journal, and I was like, wow, that's a beautiful ad. Oh, it was Cartier. Cartier had a beautiful ad. It really was like, wow, that's a really nice looking ad. And that's the type of something that people would go, hey, that looks pretty good. And that's what you want. You're not going to sell anything that moment on it. You know what I'm saying? But you're building
Yeah,
brand.
it's a narrowing niche.
And you notice the journal uses nice paper on that too. They use pretty good paper on that. In other words, they don't use cheap paper. It doesn't have like a flimsy feel to it.
Okay, and then just to close out, final topic.
Yeah,
Let's talk about the business part of the Olympics. It's still a little bit early days as far as getting ratings and seeing how this really goes. But the disaster, the opening
it's a
ceremony
disaster.
was way off of 4 years ago,
It's the frickin'
which was way
Titanic.
off of 4 years before that. And NBC paid billions and billions of dollars for this. And yeah, you get 15, 17 million viewers for the big event, the opening event. And I don't know, a network in prime time, you should be doing that on any given Thursday night.
Let me just tell you this. the other night, Purdue played Michigan, okay, over 1 million viewers. That's one regional college basketball game, okay. The Olympics had that night in the U.S. like 4 million, 5 million viewers on all their different channels and everything. You know what I'm saying? Look, first of all, I'm not saying ice skating is not a sport. I'm just saying that if you gave those girls some hockey sticks and they went after each other, there'd be a lot more people watching it. You know what I'm saying? Let's just say, you put the Zamboni out on the ice and have them chasing them around for their life. I think viewership goes up. That's just me, but you know what I'm saying? So my point is that I mean, I love the luge. We all watch. I mean, let's face it. What was the number one video from the downhill skis? The guy who he racked himself on one of the things. He came. I mean, it's great sports. They're great athletes. But the fact of the matter is, the best line I heard is essentially people do not watch TV the way they used to watch TV, and they get their sports clips. They want to watch the sports clips. They want to watch that big moment. I mean, they want to watch that stunning performance. You know what I'm saying? They want to watch all these things, but they want to watch it like that. And the NBA, the NFL. I mean, I know if I have a friend who works at MLB over here in New Jersey. You know what I'm saying? He said they have got a team sitting there all day long, literally as the game is happening, they're putting the highlights together. In other words, when the Red Sox play the Yankees, the highlight reel is ready 15 minutes after the game is over because they've been making the highlight reel the whole time, and they just run it through. And then then they scrub that highlight reel. The fact of the matter is they're really hurting. The best part about the Olympics is I watch the Gutfeld show on Fox at night, and they're advertising on Fox for the Olympics. That tells you how desperate they are. Their ratings are awful.
Wow.
Their ratings are awful. They're down 43%.
How would you love to be the Fox ad salesperson
Oh
taking
my
a call
God,
from NBC?
that would be fantastic. The viewership is down. It's down 43% across the board from 2018. But in the key demographic, because I'm a geek and pay attention to this stuff, in the key demographic of 18 to 49, which I'm not part of, it's down 63%.
Wow.
Okay? So people just aren't watching this thing. They don't care about this thing. Add on top of that, where are you? You're in China. And you've got all these bad things happening, all these bad stories happening. Nothing's going right. The place is ugly. It's absolutely horrible. We've got the stories that are coming out of the places are bad. There's the Chinese American girl who started, Elaine Gu. She's going to be on the menu pretty soon for U.S. sports broadcasters. People, she's being celebrated right now by the culturalists. And look at the coverage of the Olympics. NBC has brought in Andrew Brown and this woman from Yale, Jing Tu, who are supposed to add cultural relevance to it. You know what I'm saying? It's a sporting event. We want to watch sports. We don't want to hear about the Qing dynasty in whenever it was. You know what I'm saying? We want to watch sports. And then we want to be able to debate sports without every time we start debating sports, they remind us that there's a human rights violation going on over in the corner. I'm with the human rights people. I'm on their side. I'm just telling you it makes lousy TV. Why would the IOC think when Colin Kaepernick took a knee, and destroyed NFL ratings that still haven't recovered, where a lot of people just won't watch it anymore. Why would that happen with Colin Kaepernick? Okay, let's be fair. Why would that happen? Why would that not happen with the Olympics when everything about the Olympics is political now? Everything. God bless the activists who have been sticking it to China. This is a huge loss for NBC. I have a estimation that I saw the other day, because you remember they lost money in the Summer Olympics. They pay $7.5 billion for 20 years of Olympics. I don't know where they're at in that stage. Apparently they lost.
Yeah.
Okay. So you're halfway through right now, basically. My understanding is they lost close to $500 million. That's probably high, but they lost a few $100 million in
no crowds,
in Tokyo, which makes sense because the advertisers just aren't paying. You know what I'm saying? My understanding that this could be the shorter period of time. It still could be the same, $300 million. Look, they brought Mike Trillo back. You know, he's the lead NBC announcer at the Olympics. He's their top guy. And where is he? He's back in New York now.
Yeah.
Okay, or he's back in Connecticut, wherever they got him. But the point is, because you know, in other words, they've given up. They're phoning it in. It's not working. There was something in, was it Adweek the other day, that essentially the people who paid deposits, the ratings are so bad. Let's say you paid for your ad, you paid 40% now or 50% now, and then you were going to pay the rest when you get the final ratings because it's on a scale. My understanding is for some of these guys who paid the 50%, it's so low, they're actually going to get a rebate from the money they already paid. So it's a disaster. And I think what it's going to tell us is the next time we have Olympics, it'll probably be a Twitter and a YouTube Olympics. And that's, in other words, like if we'll be sitting here and I go, oh, now, you know, you have the 800-meter race and it's going to go, boom, it's going to come right up to you. You know what I'm saying? The 800 meters is going to come right to you. You know, and then you'll watch it and then you'll go back to whatever you're doing in the day. But the idea of sitting around like surfing and they go from this and that, I think that's over.
Right. Well, they also might want to do it in a place that's actually known for winter sports. When it comes to the Winter Olympics, you know, maybe you can get away with Japan. There's some.
Did you see that downhill thing? They got the power.
Yes, and now it's not a nuclear plant,
you know
as some people were speculating. It's cooling towers from an old, I think, coal plant or gas plant.
Yeah, it's ugly.
I know. That's the one thing with the Olympics. It's usually some nice Norwegian mountain in the background, and you're like, oh, that looks pretty, and they're jumping. It's like this looks like Road Warrior does Winter Olympics.
And the thing is, I mean, I will say the other thing. Look, these things are always supposed to be these grand propaganda wins for China. I'm sure internally in China they'll be happy about it. That's why one of the big stories is the New York Times has sold their soul to this woman Gu, whatever's going on there. They've got all kinds of, I'm sure there's going to be these in-depth reviews. This one guy's chasing the story. Maybe he's going to write a book. You know what I'm saying? And his name's John Branch, the reporter. He's not reporting. He's basically reading their press releases for the woman. But the fact of the matter is that she's trending in China. That even shows the Chinese are not happy with their overall performance. In other words, she's the only bright spot they've got. And the bright spot is sticking it to the West. They think they're sticking it to the West. That's worth a discussion probably to see after how she comes out of this, because I think there's some real commercial implications of what she's done. I don't think it's a bad move on her part for her personally, financially. Morally, down the road, it's probably not going to be good for her, but, you know, we'll see.
Well, we'll stick with that story. That's all the time we have for this episode of Simon White. And if you like what you saw, please subscribe to us if you're watching on YouTube, or follow us on your podcast catalog. We'll be back again soon with another episode. Thanks.